Hi, and welcome to the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. I'm Dupe Witherick, alcohol free wellbeing and transformational coach, and the best selling author of A Cocktail of Clarity, How to Ditch Drinking, Embody a Joyful New Identity, and Thrive Alcohol Free. This podcast will show you that being alcohol free is not what the traditional narrative says. And even though alcohol is so ingrained in our society that it is okay to give yourself permission to stop drinking if you want to. And you do not have to wait until you hit rock bottom. It is certainly not boring, and I believe ditching drinking is just the start to living an extraordinary life. By getting rid of this one thing, it allows the doors to open to endless possibilities and opportunities. Each week, we will have guests on who are at various stages of the alcohol-free journey, from those who are curious to those who have been alcohol-free for years. We will also have experts on talking about different topics relating to alcohol and beyond. Through these conversations, you will discover what it means to thrive alcohol-free. Enjoy. And welcome to the latest episode of the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. I am so happy you're here, and I cannot believe we are on episode 30 of the podcast. So 30 episodes, which is amazing. And I'm just very grateful for you for listening. And I do hope you have been enjoying it. And if you've only just started listening today, then feel free to go back to any of the previous episodes and have a listen. I've been really honoured and blessed to have so many wonderful guests on the show. So I would love you to go and take a listen to some of the other episodes, because there are some real nuggets that people have shared. And yeah, we've had some fantastic guests on. So I definitely encourage you to go back. But thank you so much for being here and for listening and for taking the time, because I know you could be doing so many other things with your time. I do hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you are thinking there's something you'd like to hear, or that there's something missing, or there's a particular guest you'd love to hear from, then let me know. Feel free to send me an email at dw@thrivealcoholfree.com, or you can send me a DM on Instagram at thrivealcoholfree. So, talking about great guests, I have a fabulous guest today, Madeline from Happiest Sober. But before I introduce Madeline, I'd love to invite you to the 1-year anniversary of A Cocktail of Clarity. So it will be a year since my book, A Cocktail of Clarity, How to Ditch Drinking, Embody a Joyful New Identity and Thrive Alcohol Free, has been out and published. And so I am really excited to celebrate the 1 year. We don't often get a chance to celebrate, so I am really looking forward to meeting some of you and celebrating at Club Soda Tasting Rooms in London, which is a fabulous venue. I also have some amazing guests who are going to join me on a panel. So William Porter from Alcohol Explained and Denise Hamilton Mace from No Drink magazine. So if you would like to come along to the wonderful do, and it will no doubt be lots of fun and just lovely to be in a group of amazing like-minded people. So if you are looking for an outing and you'd like to join me on the 26th of April between 6:30 and 8:30 at Club Soda Tasting Rooms, then I would love you to join me. I will put the link for you to get your ticket below, and can't wait to see you there. Okay, so my guest today is Madeline from Happiest Sober. Madeline is a sober content creator. She's the host of the Happiest Sober podcast. She's the creator of the online sober community, the Happiest Sober Hub, and she hosts sober trips around the world. Madeline stopped drinking the day before me. So in November 2020, on the 8th of November, was her first day of not drinking. And that was after a decade of grey area drinking. She has discovered since that life is so much happier for her without alcohol in it. And now she's passionate about sharing that message and inspiring others on their sober journey. So I'm delighted to have Madeline. We have a really lovely conversation. And I just thought it was such a light-hearted, fun conversation, which was just really lovely to record. And So she talks about her story. She talks about how important community is. We touch on Quit Lit. She talks about sober travel. And she also gives tips if you are just getting started or you're curious about being alcohol free. So without further ado, here is the conversation with Madeline. Enjoy. Welcome, Madeline. It's so lovely to meet you. And thank you so much for being on the podcast. How are you today?
So good to meet you. I'm doing so well. How are you?
Yeah, really well. Thank you. Really well. The sun is shining. It feels like spring is sprung. There's
It
leaves
has.
beginning to pop up on the tree. I've got a massive tree in front of me at the moment, and
Oh,
it's just
nice.
lovely to see the seasons. I do love the seasons, but when you see the leaves coming out, you're like, oh,
Oh my God.
yes,
I
we're
come
getting
back to
into
life
spring.
once we get through winter onto the other side, 100%.
I know. It seems like it's been a long winter. We've just had lots of rain, which has been
Have
miserable. So we
you?
haven't even had like proper cold snow or anything. So it's just been a bit
Yeah.
dreary more than anything.
Well, see, because I'm from Canada, and so we get a lot of obviously cold and snow, and I would take a rainy winter over a snowy one. I hate the snow, but I guess the grass is always greener.
Yeah, you have amazing snow. So it's a completely
hmm
different type of snow. We'll be lucky. I mean, when it does snow, it's nowhere near as bad as that,
Right.
but it's always novel and it's quite nice. I think that whole
Yeah.
wrapping up really warm and doing all of that is fun. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, enough about the weather. Let's talk about you. For people that might not know you, it'd be lovely to just hear a bit about who you are, how you're here, and just a bit about your story.
Yeah, so I'm in Toronto. We just realized I got sober literally the day before you.
Yeah.
So November 2020, I got
Yeah.
sober. And so close to 3.5 years. And I started sharing about it online very early in my first month of my sobriety. I started a little account on Instagram called Happiest Sober. And so now I run a sober community called the Happiest Sober Hub, and I have a podcast, and that's my main thing now, is talking about sobriety. And a bit of background on my story is that I definitely identify as having been more of a gray area drinker. I grew up with alcoholism all over my family. My mom has been sober for 40 years. And my dad, when he and my mom got married, my dad was sober. And then when I was a kid, when I was 7 or 8, he relapsed. And so they separated because of my dad's drinking. And then he was pretty absent from our lives, in and out of rehab. Alcohol was a very big topic of conversation in my household. I didn't drink until I was allowed to. I definitely had a healthy respect for seeing what alcohol can do. And yet, when I started drinking, I definitely struggled with my drinking. I would say pretty early on, but I would also say it definitely progressively got worse. But at the same time, I struggled with not necessarily feeling like I fit into the box of what I understood an alcoholic to be. So I
Mm.
struggled a lot. I had terrible anxiety after drinking, and that was the main thing for me. It wasn't necessarily that I would get drunk and cause drama or have bad things happen or face any consequences. I never really faced many consequences or hit any sort of rock bottom. But for me, it was really the mental health piece of how much it was impacting my mental health. And, you got sober in 2020. So it was pandemic
Mm.
times. It definitely, COVID ramped up my drinking and made me really look at it honestly. And that was when I came to the awareness of it doesn't really matter what I label myself or how bad it has gotten yet. I know that it's problematic. I know it's a problem for me. And so I just hit that point of, okay, I'm done. I've got to make a change here.
Yeah, amazing. And so when you made that change, how did you find it? Had you tried to stop before, or did you just decide on the 8th of November that that was it, you were done?
It took me a few tries. And I had mentioned to you before we hit record, I did a year in Australia when I was
Mm.
24. And I drank so much that year. It was a working holiday. I was like, I'm just going to go and bartend and travel around. And that turned into justification for drinking almost every day and, carrying on in a way that I shouldn't have been. And so that was when I first started getting concerned about my drinking. Halfway through the year, I woke up one morning and was like, I'm going to take this month off of drinking. And I had never
Mm.
thought about even doing that before. I remember reading up on a sober blog. I was just like, oh my God, this is so not good. What the hell am I doing? And then I drank that night. And then at the end of that year, I was like, "Oh my god, I gotta reel in my drinking when I get home." And so when I got home from Australia, I did tone it down a decent amount. Being in Australia and being like, "I'm on holiday," and then going home to normal life made me for sure reel it in a little, but not to the extent that I wanted or hoped for or tried. But at the end of that year, so end of 2019, I blacked out at my work Christmas party, and I was such a wreck about it for months. So I did a dry
Mm,
January and at the
mm,
beginning of 2020, and that was the first time I ever took any chunk of time off of drinking. And I don't want to say it backfired, but I found it really hard. And so I almost used that experience as okay, this proves that sobriety is not for me. It's too hard. It wasn't, I didn't have fun. I found it
mm,
challenging. Now I understand that that actually was more evidence that I needed to get sober. If taking a month off was so miserable. But I kept drinking. And then a month later, COVID hit. And so it was actually in September that I decided I was gonna get sober. I woke up and hit
mm,
my "I'm done" moment
mm,
after the most uneventful night. Nothing went wrong. I was with one of my best friends. Absolutely nothing, but I just woke up in the morning hungover, anxious, not remembering
mm,
things, and I was just like, "I can't feel this way anymore. I have to stop." It was such a moment of clarity for me, but I set, like, an end date because my sister's 30th birthday was coming up. So I said,
mm,
"Okay, I'm gonna do my sister's 30th, and then after that, I'm done." And we were touring a winery on bikes, and I remember just thinking to myself, it was my farewell tour to wine. And the next day was my first day one. The very next day, I started reading like Quit Lit the next day and started really trying. Downloaded a sober app to track my days. But my date is obviously in November. So it took a few tries. I had 3 slips within the month and a half period
mm,
before it finally stuck for me.
mm.
What about you
Yeah,
for your
it's
November 9th? Was that your first try or did you have a few tries before then too?
so I tried the odd dry January and
Mhm.
Lent and said I'd stop, and then I ended up I'd do a week or so, and then it'll get to the
Yeah.
weekend, and I'd be like, "Well, I can drink on the week. It's just weekends. If I drink on weekends,
Mhm.
then you start bargaining with yourself, don't you?" And I don't think I ever did a 30-day or anything like I didn't do the
Yeah.
Lent, so I'd always end up drinking. So it was never really something that I actually did. But with the
Yeah.
21 days, it was a very different story, and things happened along the way that made me think actually this might be a good idea. And again, similar
Mhm.
to you, there was no rock bottom moment. I wasn't probably drinking. My husband always says you weren't even drinking very much. But for me, it was just at the point where I'd been drinking for 20 plus years and I was just like, I'm done. I don't need it. I'm not enjoying it. The only reason I'm doing it is because everyone else does it. And you feel like you have to. And then I discovered a whole new world and thought,
Mhm.
actually, this is pretty good. And
Yeah.
yeah, and went from there. But I'm curious. It's funny, isn't it? There's so many things we do. We try to moderate. You
Mhm.
said you tried to do your dry January, but you really didn't like it at all. And
Mhm.
then also the wait until the right time. So you were waiting for your sister's birthday to be out the way. You
Mhm.
didn't want to do it straight away. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on moderation and trying to justify, but also if someone's listening and thinking, okay, so I've got this coming up, I've got that coming up, what would your advice for that be as well?
Yeah, I think for sure, yes, I did wait and I gave myself that end date. And
Mm,
I think there's no wrong way to do it. Everybody has to do whatever works best for them. But really, the best time to start is always today, right? I think also, like, having gotten sober during COVID, like, nothing was really happening. So,
mm,
my sister's birthday was the only thing I had going on. So I think it was easy to be okay, I'll do that. And then there was nothing else coming up. Whereas if
yeah,
that was normal life, there would have been a next thing and a next thing and a next thing. So I think that's
yeah.
a lot harder to do now than doing it when you're still pretty isolated.
Mm,
So I think, yeah, there will always be a next thing. And if anything, you can use that next thing as motivation because it can be like, oh, I have this coming up. I'd love to not black out or make an ass of myself at it or wake up in the morning feeling anxious and shame after it. So that can almost be helpful to reframe it that way. But
mm,
as for moderation, yeah, I definitely tried before I woke up and said I'm done drinking. I
mm,
tried playing around with moderation. And what I've come to realize is that it's so much more freeing to just decide I'm not going to drink at all than to
Yeah.
try to moderate. What I've really identified is that even if I could have one or two successfully, it never felt enough. It still
Mm,
wasn't satisfying. It feels more like deprivation to have one or two drinks and then stop than to
mm,
actually have none. And so I think so many people who struggle with their drinking really want to make moderation work because then it's a free pass to get to continue drinking. Oh, if I can moderate, then it's okay for me to drink. But I think those of us who struggle with drinking, if we get honest with ourselves, we don't actually really want to moderate. We just want to be able to drink. So I think the marker of being able to moderate isn't whether you can successfully have one or two drinks, it's how it feels to only have one or two drinks. And if you
mm,
can do it and feel satisfied and I don't need any more, I'm done. I had my one drink, I'm happy, then you're probably a pretty take it or leave it drinker. But if you can have one or two and then stop, but then you're fixated on it, it's taking up mental
yeah.
space, then that is so much more work than
Yeah.
just deciding I'm not going to drink.
Yeah, so true. And it is the mental capacity that it takes up. It's the thinking, should I drink on a
Mhm.
Wednesday? And actually, well, I've come back from work on a Tuesday and I'm feeling stressed. Oh, I want a glass, but I need to wait till Wednesday. Oh, should I have one and
Yeah.
two on the Friday? And it
Such a
is
slippery
just
slope.
mental games in your head. And to your point,
Mhm.
I do think it is so much easier to just say, that's it, done, and not have to keep doing those mental gymnastics. And you also talked about the work events. And I think it's really important to highlight the mental health aspect and the anxiety because alcohol does absolutely exacerbate stress, anxiety, depression. But again, did you say you stopped drinking after that event or did you not?
So
Uh,
it
w-
was a work
you did
Christmas
dry
party, so it was
January.
December, so then I did dry
Mm,
January. I kept
yeah,
drinking over the holidays, and just the
yeah.
holidays it wasn't just a work party, then I blacked out at my family gathering. I went upstairs like Irish exited, passed out drunk without saying bye to anyone. It was just like, "Oh my god." That season, that holiday season was a rough one, but yeah, to your
Mm,
point, the mental health piece, I remember the very first time I ever got drunk. And I wasn't someone who previously necessarily struggled with a lot of anxiety, but the first time I ever got drunk, I woke up and I remember it vividly. I was laying in bed feeling crippling anxiety after the very first time. And so that was always a thing for me. But I guess I loved drinking so much that it felt worth it until it just wasn't worth it anymore. But with that work party, it for sure was such a turning point because it just wrecked me. I always had a rule for myself to try to keep it kinda together around coworkers, drinking with
mm,
coworkers, like, "Okay, don't get too carried away, don't get too drunk," especially knowing how much anxiety I struggled with when that happened, and so when I woke up after that and did not remember the end of my night, I remembered sitting down at a table with people, and then I didn't remember really anything that happened after that. I had very fuzzy memories of one of my girlfriends helping me find my coat and leave, which by the way, I wore someone else's coat home and someone else's scarf. I didn't come there with a scarf.
oh, bless you.
Um, and so I was in a spiral all weekend. I
Yeah.
was in a spiral walking into work on Monday. I spiraled about that for months and months and months. It really haunted me.
Mm, yeah, yeah. And I think everyone's done it. Everyone's been there and done it, haven't they?
Mhm.
But it's for some
Yeah.
people, they keep going. They know that that's been the case, but it sometimes you
Mhm.
just need a few of those before you actually do anything about it.
Yeah, and the
Um,
important thing too is to my knowledge to this day,
mm,
nothing really happened that I
yeah,
needed to be stressed about. I never heard, "Oh, you did this." You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
But still, and I think that was why honestly I had my moment after an uneventful night because
Mm,
truly I was with like my best friend drinking wine, woke up to a text from her saying, "Thanks for such a lovely night. Love you." I
mm,
had no reason to feel anxious and yet I still felt so low. And so I think
yeah,
almost when you're left with nothing has gone wrong. And with the work party, I could blame it on, oh my God, I blacked out at my work party. That's why I'm so
mm,
anxious. And
mm,
when I had a night where there was nothing to worry about and I still felt so anxious, it's the only
mm,
thing is the drinking, right?
mm, yeah. And how do you feel now when it comes to anxiety?
I definitely struggle in different ways. It's so funny. I just did an episode on my podcast with my mom about overthinking. I think
Mm,
oftentimes when we get sober, then we're left with a lot of thoughts that we used to
mm,
drink to quiet. But my anxiety levels from when I drank are
mm,
drastically low. I love waking up in the mornings with actual peace of mind and not having to
mm,
feel that way. It's like total relief, a total 180 in my mental state when I wake up in the morning, but still a
Mm,
work in progress, still struggle sometimes with overthinking things or
yeah.
getting worried or anxious about situations, but that level of crippling anxiety that I could
Mm,
not even rationalize or shake, that was totally the alcohol.
yeah, yeah, of course. And you talked about doing dry January and not liking it. So you mentioned by the time you did November, you already knew about Quit Lit. Did you know the
Mm.
term grey area drinker? You've used it. I don't know if you knew it then, but you already seemed like you were you had an app. So how did that all come about?
Yeah. When I did dry January, I didn't have any awareness of any of that. But in the
Mm.
summer of 2020, I actually stumbled onto sober Instagram. I was listening to a
Um,
podcast, and I don't know if you know of Millie Gooch from the Sober Girl Society.
yeah.
She was on that podcast, and the podcast episode, so it wasn't a sober podcast, it was just a regular podcast I listened to, and I was scrolling through the episodes, and I saw one of them was titled Sober Curious, and it was my first time ever hearing that term, and so it obviously piqued my interest because I was struggling with my drinking, so I listened, and when I listened to that episode, I heard her talk about alcohol and our relationship to alcohol in a way that I'd never heard it talked about before. Because
Mm.
again, I grew up with my mom got sober from AA in her 20s. So I grew up with a very sort of black and white view of it. And it felt very like either you're an alcoholic or you're a normal drinker. And if you
Mm.
don't fully fit the box of alcoholic, then that means you can keep drinking, you know what I mean? It almost
Yeah.
feels like you need that
Yeah.
justification for it, and so
Yeah.
hearing it said in that episode for the first time, like, "Oh, it's not so black and white, there's a big spectrum in between," I was like, "Oh
Mm.
my god, that's where I fall for sure." I know I'm not on the
Mm.
normal side.
Yeah.
Whether or not I'm an alcoholic, maybe just irrelevant, but I know that I'm somewhere on that spectrum of it being a problem, and so from listening to that, then went and looked her up, and then I stumbled onto sober Instagram, so I would be hungover scrolling sober Instagram for inspiration and then found Quit Lit through that. So yeah, by the
Mm.
time I decided it, the seed had for sure been planted because I stumbled into all of that.
Yeah. So what was your first Quit Lit book?
Oh, so there were kind of 2 because when I did dry January, I did actually my mom had bought she obviously saw red flags. My mom had bought the book The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober by Catherine
Yeah.
Gray. So
Yeah.
when I got home from Australia, I actually tried reading it, but I couldn't get through it because I just wasn't ready. When I got home
Yeah.
from Australia, I was like, I need to deal with my drinking, and then started reading it, got scared, stopped reading it. So then once I got onto Quit Lit, I read This Naked Mind by Annie Grace,
Mm.
and then I read in entirety The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober by Catherine Gray. That one's I would label as my favorite ever,
Yeah.
probably Quit Lit, yeah. What's your
Same.
favorite?
That was the
Yeah,
first
that
one I
one?
read as
Yeah.
well, and I loved it. But yeah, I've read a lot of the others, and that I think there's always something you can take away from them. And it inspired me to write my book, A Cocktail of Clarity. If anyone wants to read that, that's there. So for me, I wanted to write something that was very much coming from a stance of not needing to go to rehab or feel
Mm,
like there was a rock bottom, make it more of a
mhm.
normal thing to stop and to inspire your everyday drinker who might be thinking life could be better in some way, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, or physically, then just give it a go and take a break. And I was originally doing a 21-day break. So my book talks through that journey and gives tips and tricks and questions and actions for people to do along the way. So it's coming up to a year. And so I've got a celebration at Club Soda tasting room in
Oh,
London at the end
yeah.
of the month.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, really excited about
Amazing.
that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. I think Quitlet has definitely helped a lot of people to just, to your
Mhm.
point, see things differently. When you said, I heard it in a way that I've never heard it before, that's so impactful, isn't it? And a lot of
Mhm.
people are going around, maybe waking up at 3 in the morning and thinking, oh, I'm not enjoying it, or there's something that's niggling me. Maybe I'll be better off stopping. But they think they're the only one, and they don't know they actually have a choice in this. It's you can give yourself
Mhm.
permission to take a
Yes.
step back, and I think a lot of people don't think they
100%.
can.
Yeah, that's so true and so well said because that's something that I really realized too is hearing Even just something as simple as you don't need to be an alcoholic to quit drinking. You don't need to hit rock bottom to quit drinking. It gave me permission
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
was rather than the question be, do I fit the standard of someone who has to quit drinking? The question
Exactly.
just can be, well, is drinking serving me? Could my life be better
Yeah.
without it? And we all know those answers.
Exactly. Exactly. That's great. That's great. So, what have you done since? You obviously stayed on the journey. You now have
Mhm.
your Instagram and your hub that are all about the happiest sober. So, you've obviously been happy since you stopped drinking. So, I'd love to hear some of the highlights of your journey and any
Yeah, oh my
lowlights as well
gosh.
that you might want to
Well,
mention.
yeah, I was gonna say that too. Happiest sober definitely does not mean life is perfect and happy all the time.
Exactly.
Obviously, in sobriety, it's still very much life, and
Yeah,
we're all works
absolutely.
in progress. But it's knowing my life is happiest when I'm sober,
Yeah.
without a doubt. So yeah, as for what I've done, so I started sharing online, like I said, really, really early on. And then I've since started like an online virtual support group, the Happiest Sober Hub. I have my podcast, Happiest Sober Podcast. I also host sober trips. So they're not really like retreats. It's genuinely just like if you want to do group travel and just go have fun with a group of sober people and know that drinking
Mm,
is not going to be a part of it. So I hosted my first trip to Costa Rica last year, and I have my
yeah.
next one coming up actually next month. We're going to Croatia.
Brilliant.
Um, so that's been something that's been super exciting. But yeah, I think as for what I've done, I've just continued to live life without alcohol. And I think I used to imagine if I ever stopped drinking, life would just stop and be so depressing. And I do more now because when I was drinking, my whole
Yeah.
definition of like fun and joy and what I look forward to and connection and all of it came from alcohol. So the weekend's coming up. Where are we drinking this weekend? You know what I mean? Whereas
Yeah.
now I get outside more. I go on hikes. I care more about being in nature. I still go out. I go out with my girlfriends.
Mm,
I drink mocktails. I do whatever I want to do. I love going to concerts. I love going to
yeah.
comedy shows. I think it really has allowed me to live just a much more full life. And I also think the other thing is that I am so much more willing now to push myself out of my comfort zone
Mm,
in sobriety, whereas I definitely lived a more small, timid life when I was drinking. And I think when you get sober, for me, what really made my sobriety stick and made me push through, having those few slips and those few times where I went back to drinking and restarted was this realization of like, oh, I have to be willing to be uncomfortable if I'm going to stay sober. That is part of the deal. And so
mm.
that really extended to other parts of my life where once you prove to yourself you can do that, then you can be uncomfortable in general and do things that scare you. And yeah, so that's been definitely a lot of growth and expansion has come from that.
Yeah, absolutely. It is amazing. I think a lot of people say when you stop drinking, it is all about personal growth and
Mhm.
transformation. That is
Mhm.
effectively what it is. And I think it gives people a superpower and you're only
Yes.
gaining, you're never giving anything up.
1000%.
And I think the whole being brave, it does let you be brave.
Mhm.
And to your point about being uncomfortable, I think you end up being so much more uncomfortable every day because you're not living a small life. You're pushing the boat
Yeah.
out. You're doing things that are different, that are uncommon, that are actually giving you an opportunity to thrive, to enjoy life, and to be the best you that you can be as well,
Mhm.
which is fab. And I love the fact that with the hub and with the sober travel as well. Tell us a little bit about Costa Rica. How was that? And then Croatia's quite a different venue. So
Mhm.
how did you come up with how are you coming up with the different venues?
Yeah, oh my gosh, Costa Rica was so amazing. I honestly even underestimated how amazing it was gonna be because it was my first time hosting a sober trip, and we all went in there strangers, and I think I went in knowing no, I did go in knowing, like, sobriety bonds us, but I think I really underestimated it because by the time we left, I bawled my eyes out saying goodbye to everyone, and it was just such an incredible experience to travel together and be with a group of people who are all not drinking, who are all there present for it. And all of us were like pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone and facing different fears just by
Mm.
being there. I also have a terrible fear of heights and flying, by the way. And I used to drink to fly. So even so many things kind of pushing myself, but I rappelled off of a 200-foot waterfall. And
Wow.
when
Oh
I
my
tell you most scared I've
goodness.
ever been, I still have a little scar from it. I don't know if
Oh
you can see it on the camera,
gosh.
but it's my badge of honor.
Oh, bless you.
Um, but yeah, so
Oh,
definitely just so much pushing myself. But really, what was so amazing was just the bond of the people, and we all just had the best time together. And there were people in their
mm,
20s, 30s, 40s, 50s from different places. But it's just such a
wow.
strong connector. Something
Yeah.
really cool that happened on that trip was we were all having dinner. We were on our resort having dinner and we were all just having so much fun, laughing so loud. We all just laughed so much. And at one point, our waiter came over to us with a tray of shots on the house. And all of us were like, no, 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 we don't drink. Thank you. It's okay. And he looked so confused and walked away like, okay. And we were kind of joking. Like, he probably assumes we're drunk with
Yeah.
how rowdy we're being. But then he came
Mm.
back and he had a tray of mocktail shots.
Oh,
And he gave us all mocktails, and he said to me, he's like, "I think it's so cool. This whole group doesn't drink because there were 12 of us
yeah.
there."
Yeah.
And someone on the trip, one of the girls on the trip said something that was just so true, where she said, "It was so nice being a we and not a me." Usually you're like, "I
Yeah.
don't drink." Everyone else is having it.
Yeah.
You're like, "No, it's okay. I don't drink." But it was, "No, we all don't drink." So
Yeah.
it was such an awesome experience. I'm super excited for the next one.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's so true, isn't it? I think that's what puts people off even taking a break because they don't want to be the one in the
The odd one
bar or
out.
in the restaurant
Mhm.
saying, I'm not having the wine or I'm not having the cocktail or whatever it is. And I'm sure you're probably still the bond afterwards, you're still talking to each other and
Mhm.
you're
Yep.
still connected. And so that's yeah, that's fab. And so what is the Croatia trip going to be like?
Yeah, I'm excited. We'll see. I'll find out, but we've got a good group of us going, and
Yeah.
it's a different trip, like you said. Costa Rica is a little bit more like adventure,
Yeah.
adventure
Yeah.
action type trip. And this one will be a lot of sightseeing, and it's a good mixture of busy and getting downtime together. So I've never been to Croatia, but I've heard literally the best things.
Yeah,
So I'm so
amazing.
excited. Yeah, but
And
I'm always most excited. Like, yes, the place is awesome, but it's the people that make it such a special thing. So I'm excited to
yeah,
get to spend a week with sober people.
yeah. And isn't that amazing? Because I think so many of us always thought that it was the alcohol that made it fun. And if you think
Mhm.
about holidays, you go all inclusive so you can drink as much as you can because that's the one time of the year where no one bats an eyelid and you can go wild and
Mhm.
everything else. And even just everyday events saying that it's because, well, people mention the alcohol, they don't really mention they had a laugh, it was fun, but I find personally, I laugh so much harder now. I'm sort of
Yes.
crying with laughter,
Yes.
and it's the real belly laughs, and you just think,
Mhm.
"Gosh, I'm actually having fun with the people that I'm with. It's not about anything else."
Mhm.
And I think we were so tricked for so many years that you can't have
Yes.
fun. You mentioned going to concerts and comedy clubs and all of that sort of thing. And I think people think, oh, well, I can't dance now that I'm not drinking. I can't do all the things I used to do. And it's just so not
Mhm.
true. We've been so programmed to think
Yeah.
that life is boring without alcohol, that you are a bit sad without alcohol. And it's just not the
I know,
case.
tricked. And we give alcohol so much credit.
I
When
know.
we rely on alcohol for our sense of fun, for liquid courage, it's like you
Yeah.
sell yourself short. We're
Yeah.
fully capable of enjoying life so much more without it. And our whole world gives it so much credit. It is the elixir for anything. Good day drink, bad day drink.
Yeah.
Nervous about something drink. I know. It's so true. And it's so cool to get to be on the other side of it. And I feel like you can shift from feeling like the odd one out to feeling like
Mm.
you said, oh, this is actually my superpower, and really like
Yeah.
wearing it as a badge of honor.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for the person listening, if they were thinking that they want to stop drinking, what would be your top three tips?
Ooh, top 3. Okay, so I would say, first of all, if you're thinking of quitting drinking, you already know in your gut your own truth. It doesn't matter if anyone else thinks whether or not you have a problem or whether or not you fit whatever definition. If you have a gut knowing that drinking is no longer serving you for whatever reason, then you can listen to that. Top tips, I would say number 1, just really, really connect to your why. That's so, so important to get really clear and centered on that. And in addition, I would say, I think writing everything down when you first quit drinking is so powerful because once a little bit of time goes by, it's so easy to romanticize it over time and to tell yourself it wasn't that bad or to look back with rose colored glasses. And so I think as early as you can, write out in detail your why. Why do you want to get sober? Write out in detail how alcohol is affecting you negatively. And something I did too was I wrote out a list of all my worst drunk regrets. I literally wrote out the things I've done that I'm embarrassed about, that I regret, drunk mistakes, the worst mornings I've had after drinking. And it's not to beat myself up or to stay in a place of shame. It's because when I had moments of really wanting to drink or romanticizing it, reading that list was like, whoop, that's that's a reminder. That's bringing me right back to the truth. I don't want to keep doing that. I don't want to keep living that way. So
Yeah.
just getting so clear on it, writing everything down. Community is so, so big. So
Mm.
finding a sense of community anywhere, whether it's online or virtual meetings or in person, just being able to connect with other people who are doing the same thing, immersing yourself in it, listening to podcasts, reading Quit Lit, all of that. And yeah, just I think the last thing I'll say is just trusting it might feel hard in the beginning, but that doesn't mean sobriety feels hard forever. That just means the early days are hard and you can get through them and it's so, so worth it. And if it wasn't worth it, none of us would stay sober. So you can just
Yeah.
trust you can survive your discomfort, make that decision. I can sit with hard feelings because the hard feelings that come from sobriety could never be worse than the hard feelings that come after drinking.
Mm.
I think
Yeah,
that was more than three.
absolutely.
Sorry.
But great tips, and absolutely agree with all of them. And it is interesting because, as you say, there's even though we're not drinking, life still happens. You still go through those emotional waves and everything else, but as you say, it's 10 times worse if you're drinking, and you can actually
Mhm.
navigate it in a lot more of a clearer mental headspace when you're not drinking, regardless of whatever is thrown your way, be that positive or negative. And I didn't appreciate this, but we always thought about alcohol numbing our emotions, and we'd automatically think it's numbing stress, it's numbing various things, the feelings we're trying to get away from, but it's also numbing all our positive emotions as well. So you
Yes.
don't
Uh-huh.
fully sense that sense of joy or that sense of fun or whatever. It is on that lower level. And I think we underestimate that fact when we think about that. So to really feel into your emotions, as you say, and be able to live into those and just appreciate them is an amazing thing without anything that's actually obscuring what they really are. So yeah,
Mhm.
fantastic.
100%.
Yeah. So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best
Mhm.
way and what would you encourage people to do? You've mentioned the hub. Maybe talk a little bit about the Happiest Sober hub.
Yeah, and if you wanna find me, you can find me on Instagram at Happiest Sober, and you can always send me a message there, but the Happiest Sober Hub is my, like, virtual community, so we meet twice a week on Zoom for sober
Mm.
support meetings. We also have a book club that we've started, and we have, like, a private Facebook group where we all stay connected outside of the meetings as well. Also, I'm in the planning stages right now for an in-person meetup, which is gonna be a
Oh,
little yearly thing that we do
cool.
in the hub as well. But it's a
Brilliant.
really awesome community. Everyone in there is so welcoming and supportive, and I always leave those meetings just like my cup is filled because it's really, really an inspiring space and group of people. So, yeah, I can always connect there.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. And it is amazing, I think, how community makes such a difference. For me,
Mhm.
I discovered a community towards the end of my 21 days, which is what kept me going. And
Yes.
because we were going into Christmas and New Year, as you remember, and I was like, there's no way I'm not going to drink over Christmas and
And
New
you did
Year,
it after, like,
and
really having the intention of a 21-day break. That's really
yeah,
cool that you stuck with it through the holidays.
so I stuck with it. But again, I think community helps with that as well, and just the knowledge and seeing things in a slightly different light. So yeah, I think what you're doing with the hub is fantastic. So well done
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Okay, so I always end the episode with asking, what does thriving alcohol free mean to you?
Yeah, I think thriving alcohol free is all about the mindset you choose to have around it because I think it can be really easy when you quit drinking to fall into a little bit of victim mentality of, oh, I'm left out and it's not fair. Other people get to drink and I don't get to drink, and, all those things. And it's valid to feel that way early on. Sometimes that's just part of the grieving process and it's okay to feel that. But I also think at a certain point, we have to really make a decision on how we want to frame it for ourselves, right? And whether you want to stay in that place or whether you really want to lean into, like you said, it being your superpower and choosing to really focus on all the ways that it makes life better. And remembering I made this choice because I wanted a better life for myself. And I think rather than focusing on what you feel like you lost by getting sober, really making a decision, I'm going to focus on everything that there is to gain. So I think it's really just making the decision of I am going to really see it. I'm going to view this in an empowering way for myself.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's really helpful because I think it's really easy to have that victim mentality and to feel
Hmm.
sorry for yourself. And
Yeah, which I did a
there's
lot at
no
first.
there's no need. There's no
Yeah.
need. There really isn't. Yeah. Okay. So you said you did it a lot at first. So tell us a
Hmm.
little bit about that before we finish.
Yeah, I just really remember I struggled with, even though my mom is sober, I have two sisters who I'm super close with, and my stepdad who I'm super close with. And it was our fun thing. We would come home to visit my parents and we'd all drink together, minus my mom.
Mm,
And so I really, really struggled with feeling so left out and struggling with feeling I'm not a part of this anymore. And I
mm,
definitely caught myself a few times, especially over the holidays. We got sober right before the
mm,
holidays, feeling like, oh, this isn't fair. They get to
mm,
drink and I don't. And then I
mm,
really would, anytime those thoughts would come up, I would catch them and remember it's not they get to drink and I don't, because
mm.
technically I could pick up a drink anytime I want
Exactly.
if I choose
Yeah.
to. And really
Mm,
remembering this is a choice that I have made, and it's a choice that I've made with very good reason. And I'm going to hold on to that. This is not something I'm stuck in. This is an
mm,
empowering decision I made to make my life better. And so
yeah.
definitely I would have my moments of feeling those things. And then like once I could catch the thought and talk my talk myself down from it a little bit. But it's a practice. It takes time for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I love what you said about it being an empowering decision. And it's absolutely right. We could all go out tomorrow or tonight and have a drink, but we're choosing not to. So we actually get
Exactly.
to not drink. And that is a
Yes,
very
exactly,
different view, isn't it?
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
language is a powerful thing, isn't it?
it's so powerful, so
Mhm,
powerful. It's all about mindset.
mhm.
Okay, so is there anything else you want to leave the listener with? Any last words of wisdom or
Oh
anything you
my
want to
gosh,
add?
just that if you're even listening to this in the first place, I applaud you, because I think even just being willing to explore our relationship with alcohol, even if you haven't taken any action yet, is so brave. It takes so
Mm,
much courage to just get honest with yourself. So if you're listening to this and you haven't even changed anything yet, you're already doing the right thing and you're already taking a really, really brave step. And just again, if something inside you makes you feel like maybe sobriety's for you, you can absolutely trust that, because life is actually just so much better on the other side of it. It really is. Even if it feels hard at first, that phase will, it really does get so much easier. And it becomes, for me, the thing I'm for sure most grateful for. And I'm really grateful to myself for sticking with it even on the hard days.
yeah, amazing. Wow, thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest. And no
Thank you for
doubt you've
having me.
inspired lots of people, and
Oh.
it really shows this can be fun. This is a choice, and
Mhm.
you can choose and
Yes.
see where it gets you, because
Mhm.
you could be traveling the world with Madeline and doing various things. You could have an instant community, and it's lots of fun. You can still go
Yes.
to concerts and go to comedy clubs, and you won't
Yes, you
miss
can still
out,
do
you
all
know.
the things. You'll just remember it the next day.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Madeline. Been
you
really
so much.
lovely,
This was
and
so
we'll speak
fun.
soon. Take care.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madeline. It was so lovely to speak to you, and I do hope that you found it useful and helpful to hear Madeline, and hopefully you were inspired by some of the sober travel and her tips for stopping drinking if you are thinking about it. And it was really good just nice conversations. So before we go today, I wanted to mention human design. And this week, I have been speaking to lots of people about human design. And I've done a couple of human design sessions. And I just thought it's worth reiterating how great this tool is and what a sense it gives for people in terms of validating who they really are and who they know deep down they are. So you may have listened to the podcast episodes a few weeks ago with Sheetal Kurup on human design, and it's ultimately a self-development tool that empowers you to really know who you are, how to make the best decisions, and understand your key strengths. And then you can also see from your human design how best to use your energy and how to do things in a way that makes life easier and helps things flow a lot better. So through human design, you can truly be your authentic self. You can feel validated, that you can listen to your own intuition and what you already know deep down that is true, you can actually feel that you can go after it and you can do it and truly embrace and celebrate the person you are. So I wanted to highlight who human design could be for. And I really think you could benefit from human design if you're going through any of the following things. So, one, if you are going through a time of transition where you're maybe starting a new job or moving somewhere, moving to a different city, country, moving home. If you are coming to the end of a relationship, or if you are in a new phase of life, so you've maybe had a baby or you're just entering retirement, then human design could be a really good thing for you to do to gain clarity. Other things that potentially would make you want to get to know your human design are if you're feeling frustrated, angry, bitter, or disappointed in some way, if you're feeling uncertain about your life path, purpose, or direction, and if you are just on a personal growth journey and you'd really want to get deeper insights about who you are and better understand your behaviors and patterns, then human design is a great thing to do. And for many of us, I think we all get to a point where you have a bit of a crossroads when it comes to career, whether you're on the right career path, whether you're in the right job, and whether you're fully satisfied in that job. And if you've got any important career decisions, then again, doing human design could be a way to gain clarity. And finally, as I mentioned, just looking for validation. If you're looking for validation or confirmation about something in your life, but that you already maybe sense or know deep down is true, but you want to really test that, then it could be a good way to get some guidance. And so if you are looking for greater self-awareness, clarity, guidance, and you're looking for personal growth, then human design is definitely for you. And so I wanted to remind you that I do one-to-one personalized human design sessions. And as I've previously said, it's part of my Thrive AF method. And so the freedom part is really where it fits. So my method covers foundations first and freedom, and human design will help you discover how you're uniquely wired to fulfill your potential and thrive in all areas of your life. So if you want to do a human design session, then I will leave the details in the show notes for you to book a session. In a session, we generally cover using your energy in the most effective way, strategies for living authentically, the way to get the right opportunities come to you, the best way to make decisions that you can trust, the way to know that you're actually being your true self. You'll understand your strengths, your vulnerabilities, areas of growth, and you'll see the areas where you're maybe not living in alignment, as well as ways to manage and process your emotions, plus so much more. So I really hope you consider looking into your human design. And if not with me, then definitely go and look into it a bit more. And maybe there'll be someone else who you would like to do your human design session with. But I think it's so important for everyone to really know who they are and to live their authentic life and not feel that they have to follow the well-trodden path that everyone does or follow the crowd and not do things differently. And as you know, by being alcohol free, this is really stepping away from the grain and doing something that's a bit uncommon, but actually the reward is amazing. So why not do a human design? Because I know it will empower you to truly embrace and celebrate who you are. Anyway, as I said, thank you so much again for being part of this community, listening to the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast and coming on this journey with me to episode 30. And I can't wait to see where we get to next. And if you could leave a review or share this podcast episode with a friend, I'd be most grateful. Any reviews just helps other people to find the podcast, and I'd love for more people to be able to know that they can stop drinking, they can give themselves permission, and actually they get to stop drinking. It gives them a superpower. Life is so much better without it, and they can thrive alcohol free. So if you want to share that, please do. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe so you get alerted every time I drop a new episode. I'd love it if you could rate, review, and share this episode. Feel free to tag me on Instagram at Thrive Alcohol Free and follow me for daily tips. If you would like to work with me, I offer one-to-one coaching sessions and have my signature Thrive Alcohol Free Society group coaching program. If you're not yet ready for coaching, I also have a self-paced online course, which is a companion to my book, A Cocktail of Clarity. All the links are in the show notes. I will see you in the next episode. Have a wonderful week. Take care.